Right. Good afternoon. Dr. Janke should be back on in just a minute. I want to welcome okay, he's back. All right. I want to welcome everybody to this week's Iowa Learning Farms webinar. For those that might be ISU employees, you will notice Adam and I are both at home. It's not because we just wanted to go back to feeling like we did about 3 years ago at this time, but the internet is down at Iowa State University. So we have both gone to different locations. For me, it's on the Mediacom or a MetroNet, excuse me, internet. So little challenges at Iowa State that have maybe raised some of our anxiety this morning in getting all prepared for the webinar. But we are really fortunate to have for this Iowa Learning Farms webinar. For those that don't know, I'm Matt Helmers with Iowa State University. And we're fortunate to have Dr. Adam Janke and Dr. Stefanik, both at Iowa State. Adam, an associate professor in the Department of Natural Resource Ecology and Management, and Kay, assistant director of the Iowa Nutrient Research Center. And they're going to talk today about Iowa's wetlands from the sky. In fact, might be kind of an interesting time. If you're flying in or out of Iowa right now, you might see some potholes in north central Iowa, that historic wetlands, but you didn't get on to hear me talk. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam and Kay. And as normal, if you have questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box, and we will get those questions to Adam and Kay at the end of their talk. So with that, the virtual floor is all yours.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks, Matt. And hi, folks. Happy to be joining you from my home in Ames, like it's 2020 all over again. Kay is on as well. We'll do some brief introductions and then talk to you about where we're headed. So as Dr. Helmers mentioned, my name is Adam Janke, and I'm a wildlife educator, wildlife biologist with responsibilities in extension and also doing research at Iowa State. And I do some of my research on wetland ecosystems. And what we wanted to do in this project is to present to you some information about the status of wetland in Iowa today. So I think Kay has not been able to make it on yet. Matt, you might want to connect with her. I just got a text message from her, and we'll wait for Kay to join us here in a second, and I'll go ahead and get started with the program. So what we wanted to do here was essentially just talk about some of the wetland ecosystems that we have in Iowa. So much of our conversation and education often focus on all of the loss. And of course, you know those numbers. Something like 95% of Iowa's wetlands have been lost to drainage since the arrival of European colonists in Iowa. But there's been a lot of good work done in Iowa in the name of wetland conservation. And what this project really is all about is sort of celebrating and profiling the diversity of wetlands that we have in Iowa, restoration, or those that were protected time, to people understand the diverse types of wetlands that we have in the state, and also the diversity of functions that they provide for society. And so that was the goal for the project. And we did it all from the air. With a drone that we bought with a small grant that we got from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Diversity Program. And we thought that would be the best way to profile this stuff. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take you all over the state on each picture of a wetland that you see, like this one in the background of Ventura Marsh in Gregorio County. You'll see what county we took the photo in, and then we'll talk a little bit about the wetland we were featuring. We're going to talk today about 6 different wetlands. We in total will have 12 videos released by April 15th is our goal, our target date to have all of them released, and many of the wetland videos are already released, and we'll show you how to find those here soon. So let me pause and see if Kay has managed to make it. If you have, Kay, I will let you talk. Okay, I will keep going. So our first wetland that we wanted to feature is one that Kay actually did the videography on. And this is in Franklin County. It's called Forever Fin. And what catches your eye, I think, in this photograph is actually the surface water, but that water is just a stream. Your eye is not deceiving you. And instead, the wetland ecosystem here is pretty subtle, and it's pretty easy to miss. It's a fin. This is created in surface water or groundwater comes to the surface, often in a landscape position like you see here, where there's gentle relief, which is marked by the edge of that crop field there, and then a open area dominated by herbaceous vegetation that would be defined by soggy soil. So if you walked out there, people can describe fins as feeling like a waterbed. And so if you walked out there, that's what you would feel in this Franklin County wetland. Fins in Iowa are home to a number of rare plant and animal species. And our profile of this wetland does do a nice job of demonstrating some of the the herbaceous wetland vegetation found at this fin. Fins are found throughout the state, but they're clustered primarily in northeastern and north central Iowa. And these have been extensively modified through drainage, but as we mentioned, there's many that still. The next wetland ecosystem and the wetland type that we wanted to feature is are called riverine wetlands. So these are wetlands that are fed by adjacent river or stream water. In this picture, this is one that I often think of as being the type of wetland that it doesn't look like you're in Iowa anymore. This wetland is along the Mississippi River. Those bluffs that you see in the distance there are actually Wisconsin, because Wisconsin and maybe even Minnesota, actually, because this is looking north. And this is right next to the town called New Albin in Alameda County in far northeastern Iowa. And riverine wetland ecosystem gets most of its water from Mississippi River, which is to the right side of these photographs, and then also from drainage inputs or from a natural flow of water upstream or away from the Mississippi River. And that's what this photograph here is depicting, looking in the opposite direction. And so here, these riverine wetlands are areas of herbaceous or woody vegetation adjacent to the river or stream. And sometimes you can also see disconnected meanders called oxbows that are common associated with this wetland type. That actually is the next type of wetland that we were going to profile. And I'm going to pause again and see if Kay has made it on.
Yes, I think she's on. Liz.
Hi, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yep. So our next type of wetland is an oxbow, and Kay flew this one. And Kay, are you willing to take it away from here? Yep, we hear you.
Sure.
Great.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So our next wetland is an oxbow wetland. This particular wetland is in Waterford Park in Urbandale, right on the edge of Dallas and Polk County. Oxbow wetlands are wetlands that form when a stream channel gets cut off from the main stream or river. And you can see in this image here that horseshoe shape is the oxbow wetland, and then the forested area behind that is where the stream runs through, in this case, Walnut Creek. These usually only flood or fill with water when the river or stream nearby floods. One thing I really like about this particular oxbow is that it's in an urban park. It's in a city park. And it's not kind of part of the park. It was intentionally incorporated into the features of this park. And you can see some grass areas along there. That's actually a disc golf course. So they utilize the meanders of the oxbow to help enhance what they were planning on putting in the park as well.
Great, thanks, Kay. Our next wetland ecosystem is sort of a general category, kind of like what we talked about with fin wetlands. And this is just beaver wetlands. And so we encountered the activities of beavers enhancing or modifying streams and wetlands in a number of the sites that we profile in this project. But here was one where we went out and we actually looked at a beaver meadow, like an actual place where beavers have made a variety of different types of wetland ecosystems. And so I want to point a couple of things out for you here in this image. So this is from Boone County, and this is on a wildlife management area adjacent to Saylorville Reservoir that occasionally floods under the reservoir when the water levels go up. First, the most sort of obvious thing in this area as it relates to beavers is the actual dam itself. So one of the actual dams. And so I just put that pin on the map, but then now here's a closer look at what that dam looks like from the air. And so this, of course, is the more typical apparent footprint of a beaver. Here's a photograph looking straight down the same dam. And you can see one thing that's kind of cool here is you can see one of the water quality benefits of beaver dams is, of course, that they slow water down and allow for an opportunity for settle out. And you can see how murky the water above the dam is and how it looks different behind the dam. That's water quality improvements playing out in real time. Another thing that's kind of cool about that is eventually through time in these meadows, the sediment accumulates so much that it sort of changes the whole structure of the valley itself. And that's apparent when we go back to this video or this overview of this meadow again and look further back along the bluff. And you can see that sort of light green vegetation. And then also to the right, that emergent or that open water area, that's all the lingering impact of a beaver in this meadow as well. We were actually standing on what used to be the beaver dam, and it's this sinuous line that creates the difference between the sort of different textures of grass that you can see on the left-hand side of this photograph. And then when we flew further into the valley a little bit, here's that open wetland area. And again, this is created by beaver activity 10, maybe even more years ago, a long time back, that has transformed this valley by the way the water moves through it and where sediment is deposited. So an interesting sort of type of wetland that we wanted to feature in this project. And now Kay's going to talk about this reputable wetland. And Kay, you're on mute.
All right. So
there you go.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. This particular wetland is a prairie pothole wetland. It's Bjork-Boda Marsh in Hamilton County. And one of the things I really like about being able to fly these with a drone is that you can see the topography of the landscape. You can see how these fit into the overall landscape. And if you look at the background of this picture, you can see some nice little rolling hills, and then the prairie pothole itself is within a depressional area. Most prairie pothole wetlands that you find are going to be depressional areas in the landscape. This particular wetland is within the Altamont Moraine, and this formed due to glaciation. The glaciers moving over the landscape and carving out these depressions. Bjork-Boda Marsh is a good example of a remnant prairie pothole. There are some modifications that have been made to the hydrology. It does receive some agricultural input and then does drain to a nearby stream. But overall, it has a lot of the characteristics of a remnant prairie wetland. In the pool itself, you can see some kind of mounds of vegetation. One of these mounds is a trumpeter swan nest. And these wetlands, prairie potholes, whether they're remnant, created, or restored, are really good habitat, breeding habitat for birds like trumpeter swans. Other migrating waterfowl use these as well as other animals.
In the last wetland that we're going to feature today that was part of our project is another type of riverine wetland. This one is called Sweet Marsh in Beamer County. This is a wetland that occurs at the confluence of two rivers or streams, the Wapsipinicon River, which the drone is basically hovering over in this photograph, and then a creek called Plum Creek that comes in from the north. And this is historically, we would have found a lot of wetlands, especially outside of the Des Moines lobe in Iowa, at places where two rivers come together, two floodplains combine, and wetland or rivers consistently flow out of their banks. That would have created a lot of riverine wetlands. They've of course been extensively modified through through drainage. But today, in some places, like here in Bremer County, we find restored riverine wetlands in a series of impoundments. And so Sweet Marsh has 5 different impoundments on it. And you can see that in some places, those impoundments are primarily dominated by herbaceous vegetation. And that's visible from this really beautiful observation deck that's shaped like a hawk on right in the middle of this wetland. And then there's also wetland ecosystems on and around Sweet Marsh that are associated with forested areas. And this is really important for a number of reasons. One, the Wapsipinicon River and then other river valleys throughout the state comprise a significant proportion of the forested area in the state, which is important for, economic diversification, but also ecological diversity in the state, where we have a lot of wildlife species dependent on forested ecosystems. And this is an area where we see large continuous tracts of forest, which attracts certain types of wildlife. And among other things, we have this unique species of amphibian that breeds in this part of the state, including documented on Sweet Marsh, called the central newt, that spends most of its life in forests, either in the wetlands or in the terrestrial environments that those ecosystems provide. And Sweet Marsh provides that. Here's a really pretty picture of some of the more emergent vegetation on Sweet Marsh, and then one more angle of one more of those 5 impoundments found on that wetland. And now Kay's going to talk about the resources we've developed as part of this project.
Right. So one of the main resources for this project is a website that we've put together. It is hosted through Iowa State University Extension and Outreach Natural Resources Stewardship page. The page itself is Wetlands in Iowa, and we have a QR code here. If you want to scan that, it'll take you to our website. This website has little bit of it thumbnails for all of the drone videos we're putting together, all in profile videos. It also has downloadable material, educational material on wetland conservation, water quality, benefits of wetlands. And then at the very bottom, it has links to different organizations that are doing conservation work in Iowa. And then on the next slide, the YouTube slide, all of these videos are posted through the Agriculture and Natural Resources channel on YouTube, Iowa State University Extension Outreach, and they can all be found under the playlist Iowa's Wetlands. Right now, we have 9 videos posted to YouTube. You can get to these videos either through the previous website or through this YouTube channel. We have Fen, Prairie Pothole Wetland Profile, Bjork Bodom Marsh. We have Urban Stormwater Wetland Profile, as well as things like Oxbow Wetland Profile. Right, next. And I don't know if my computer just
I think it might just
but there's also additional video. Yep. Okay, so we also have additional videos beyond what the wetlands we've just gone over. If you go to YouTube playlist or our new website, you can find videos on Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program wetlands, vernal pools, stormwater wetlands, recreation in wetlands, how you can go about finding a wetland in Iowa near you. And we're going to have a couple more videos posted, I believe 4 more videos that will be posted by mid-April. And one of those is going to be on Big Wall Lake, and then another is going to be on Pool Slough and Sweet Marsh.
So I can take the last slide here. What we want to do is just to acknowledge, first, I already mentioned at the top of the talk, but the funding partners for this, the primary funding mechanism we used for this project was a small grant from the Wildlife Diversity Program. And we want to acknowledge and thank them for their support. And then we also had funding from the Iowa Nutrient Research Center that Kay works for, and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach that I work for. Here's our contact information, and we'll also go ahead and put this stuff in the chat, and we'll put the link to that website in the chat. We want to show you some Iowa Learning Farm things. Here's if you're here for certified crop advisor continuing education units, I suspect you know the game. And so I will pause briefly on this so you know the rules of how to get those continuing education units. I will also pause briefly on this. If you've been to an Iowa Learning Farms webinar before, you know that there's a voluntary demographic survey that you can get to with this QR code. And then
I'll just add one thing on that one,
perfect.
Adam. If people have filled it out, they don't need to do it a second or third or fourth time. So just
perfect.
one time is great.
Okay. And then the next webinar is going to be this topic, choosing the right source of sulfur from the University of Minnesota. That will be next week, of course, same place, same time. And what we're going to do now is, as time allows, we were going to show you the introduction video, just a little bit of the introduction video to kind of get you exposed to what you'll see when you visit that YouTube channel. And then we'll come back and take questions that you type into the chat, either addressed to Matt or to me, probably would be the easiest way to get those. But it did occur to me, I didn't share my screen just right when I started this. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and then I'll share the screen the right way to share this video. Okay. Iowa is known for its hardworking farms and small towns aligned amid dissecting highways spanning 36 million acres of the most productive land in the world. Playing a supporting and often overlooked role in this landscape tapestry, we find perhaps Iowa is known for its hardworking farms and small towns aligned amid dissecting highways spanning 36 million acres of. All right. Well, we're just going to say the technology is not going to work with us. So we all to go to the website and check out these videos. We appreciate you joining us today. This was a different type of webinar. We thought we weren't going to do a bunch of really technical stuff. Instead, we wanted to introduce you to this new project and hopefully get you to go explore and learn this stuff on your own. This is the time where I might acknowledge Iowa State University Science and Technology. As our name implies, sometimes we don't always nail the technology part. That's what you see us doing here. But thanks for joining us. And let's, if you have questions, please type them into the chat for Matt or me or.
We do have some questions, so that's
awesome.
great.
Okay.
Yep. And so we apologize for the technical difficulties, but I will in this case, it is completely out of our control. So sometimes we can't say that with a straight face, but today I feel like we can. Okay, so this one was. This person is a county level technician in land conservation, and they just got licensed as a drone operator. What are your top pieces of advice for flying over wetland areas and collecting the imagery such as you've done?
Oh yeah, great question. I'll start. Kay's really good at this too, so I hope she'll jump in too. We were licensed in the same way. A couple of things. There's golden hour, like to know like when the sun is at the right angle over to cast shadows and sort of contrast elements on the landscape. And that's really important to time these flights right. If in the evening, if you get too late, the resolution gets really grainy and kind of low quality if it's dark, or in the morning if you're out too early. But there is this like sort of magical hour where the sun is just at the just right angle where you can get good footage. And then I don't know. Otherwise, just get the thing up. You can fly up to 400 feet above ground level. And a lot of this imagery that we flew was at 400 feet. We think that was kind of consistently some of the best views. So, Kay, what would you add? You were a real pro at this stuff.
Yeah, I think definitely make sure you're going out at the right time, so early morning or before sunset. If there's even the slightest bit of fog, that seemed to cause a lot of graininess to the videos. Wind speed, if you can get around 5 miles per hour or less, that is great. 5 to 10 miles per hour, it's okay, but you will sometimes notice a little bit of shakiness to the drone. And then a lot of drones have some presets that are like preset flying paths, where you can get some good, I think some of them even refer to it as cinematic mode or things like that, where you can get some really good quality footage.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, there are some more. This person, okay. I would agree with what this person said. This was enjoyable. Makes me want to buy some land with some oxbows or prairie potholes or beaver dams. So I would agree. All right. This one was, can you expand on oxbow water replenishment? Can it also be from rising water tables?
So there is, yes, if you're looking at groundwater table, so yes, flooding from the river is one way for water to get in an oxbow, but if your water table rises, you can get water inputs into your oxbow coming up through the ground as well.
And I guess I might also add that one of the things that's being done with some oxbow restoration is multi-purpose oxbows, where we're outletting tile drainage into some of those now as well. Okay, here we go. This one was that they have recently restored 5 acres of wetlands on their farm, and it was silted in with reed canary monoculture. They've opened up 2.5 acres of water, and they're curious if you have any recommendations for the plants or vegetation to introduce on the borders where the reed canary has been sprayed back. And this wetland type is a prairie pothole.
Mm-hmm. I could take a first stab at, reed canary grass is a really big challenge in prairie pothole wetlands. It's resistant to a range of hydrologic conditions, like how inundated it is and how frequently it's exposed to water. And that makes it relatively unique among other wetland plants that generally have more narrow tolerances for. And so we see that reed canary grass is just being really effective at taking over prairie wetlands. There are sort of, depending on the site conditions, there are plants you could choose to introduce. It would have everything, what you would decide to plant would depend on how long the water pools there. As a general rule in wetlands, and I imagine Kay could expand on this too, we generally don't tell people to plant things because wetland plants have evolved a life history that allows them to find their way into these disconnected ecosystems. Like wetlands by their very nature are generally not very connected to one another. They kind of occur in isolation across the landscape. And so most plants have actually figured out ways to literally hitch rides between wetlands, often on birds in their stomachs through seeds, or physically attached to the birds, like when they fly between wetlands. And so often much research on wetland plants tells us that you don't need to spend a lot of time thinking about what to plant there, and instead just wait for the birds to allow it to naturally colonize. But when you're trying to fight reed canary grass, you might want to think about something, and it would just depend on the hydrology of the site. So long rambling answer. One last thing to comment is it would be great to get a professional to look at the property. Someone with NRCS may have experience with wetland restoration in your area and have an informed opinion about what you could plant there, or private lands wildlife biologist with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. And those are all indexed. Their contact information is all indexed on our website, where Matt just shared this wetlands page. You can find contact information for those types of people in your county. So.
Right. Another one, is there a
there's also,
okay, go ahead. Oh. Sorry, go
ahead. There are also seed mixes that you can buy. I know when you're trying to fight reed canary, you probably do want to introduce plants. So there's seed mixes, but you can also buy plugs depending on how big the areas you want to replant. Those plugs might do a little better if you're looking at a smaller area, kind of competing against that reed canary.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, the next one. Is there a pronounced value difference between natural and man-made or restored wetlands?
Depends on how you define values, which isn't that what we're always talking about in social discourse. Yes, they're different answer for different wetland ecosystems. It also a different answer for the way in which maybe a constructed wetland is designed. One thing, I have a research project going on right now where we're looking at conservation reserve enhancement program wetlands and comparing them to restored wetland ecosystems in the prairie pothole region of Iowa. And what we find, of course, is that those wetlands constructed with, for example, a single thing in mind, water quality, denitrification, are going to be designed to maximize that value. And so Crep wetland, for example, is going to be designed to maximize hydrologic residence time and opportunities for denitrification and other things like that. And there will be trade-offs there for other wetland functions like floodwater retention or wildlife habitat or wildlife diversity that they support. So there are like always trade-offs in wetland design. And so that's why I kind of say affirm it depends. We do, however, find a lot of biological diversity in design engineered wetlands. Like we do know that they're providing a lot of good. And although they might not be exactly defined in a remnant or restored wetland ecosystem, they do provide a lot more good than alternative engineering, practices like, for example, in agriculture, like bioreactors provide basically no secondary environmental benefits like wildlife habitat, whereas wetlands provide tremendous secondary environmental benefits. And so, it just depends on how you define values and what function you're looking for. But there are certainly trade-offs in how wetlands are designed and created and restored to maximize certain ecological benefits like floodwater retention, greenhouse gas considerations, wildlife habitat, recreation, etc.
Yeah. Great. So we got a couple in here about kind of related, but okay, what is your experience with management and maintenance of restored wetlands with embankments, specifically with muskrat issues? Yeah. And then one person asked if muskrats could help control reed canary grass.
I don't think muskrats would help control reed canary grass. We see muskrats in semi-permanent wetlands. That has to do with a lot of things, primarily their life history, and they need to live in a wetland all winter. And so, whereas reed canary grass, although it occurs on the margins of semi-permanent wetlands, like the really problematic infestations of reed canary grass tend to be in wetlands with more seasonal hydro periods where the water isn't there long enough to support muskrats. And then I just don't think muskrats eat reed canary grass. I mean, they obviously eat wetland vegetation, but I don't know. There's lots of reed canary grass in places where there's lots of muskrats. So I don't think I like our chances there. Great question about muskrats and levee design and things like that. That's a perennial challenge when they start to go into the bank. The only thing that comes to my mind, and then I hope Kay can add, is, there are considerations for the slope in the design of those banks that decrease the probability that they'll be attractive to muskrat denning. Basically, the longer and flatter the slope of the dike, the less likely you are to have conflict with muskrats. So, Kay or Matt, do you have more input on that?
So some of my earlier research was on mitigation bank wetlands, and they had issues with really tall embankments with muskrat spurring animals. And I completely agree with Adam. If you can take care of your slope and your slope design, having it be pretty moderate before you even get into of the wetland, that's ideal. if you already have high embankments, some things I've seen done is where if you have an area where it's just the muskrats keep coming back to that same area, I wouldn't normally recommend this, but a little bit of riprap in just that small section where they keep coming back can help protect the rest of the wetland. It's obviously not ideal, but if you're having that issue, it may be something to consider.
Okay, what are the disadvantages of the reed canary grass? Why do we want to fight it if it naturally grows well in these areas?
Well, reed canary grass forms a monoculture and it outcompetes a lot of other vegetation. So you end up with, instead of a nice diverse plant mix, you end up with one species of plant that not only affects kind of the plant community.
We lost you, Kay. I was right there with you though. So what Kay was saying is that reed canary grass, one, is an exotic species. It's not native to North America, which just generally means that our species of wildlife and other things that we're trying to support in wetland ecosystems aren't going to benefit from it because they're just not adapted to using it. And then also what Kay was saying is that reed canary grass can form a monoculture where it's basically the only thing out there. So take, for example, the monarch butterfly. If you had a wetland that had only reed canary grass, it would basically have no value for a monarch butterfly or a bee or anything like that. Yeah, there's some species like some amphibians and maybe a few birds like red-winged blackbirds that can use dense stands of reed canary grass during their breeding season. But the vast majority of them are looking for other things provided by other plants or other vegetation structure. And a reed canary grass monoculture just would not provide that and wouldn't provide any habitat. So that's why we don't like monocultures. A little bit of reed canary grass is probably fine, but not anytime there's a monoculture, it becomes problematic.
Okay, here. Did you see floodplain forest areas with significant tree mortality due to persistent flooding?
In that Pool Slough, there was definitely some tree mortality at that one. And so, yes. Where else would we have seen that? One thing to know, you notice we have a bias towards these like open wetlands. That's what we took the pictures of because the drone is really pretty when it's a big open valley. And so it's actually a good question and maybe a good way to talk about. There's a lot of wetland ecosystems that are underneath the canopy of a forest in Iowa. And we didn't really crack that nut for how to tell that story from the air. And so you just don't see that reflected here. But yeah, we did see some tree mortality. I mean, it was apparent at Pool Slough. And then I'm trying to think we were around Saylorville Reservoir for a few things. The Beaver Valley was part of the reservoir system. And then we shot, for the intro video, we shot some footage of the delta that formed at the top of Saylorville. It's an artificial wetland, but pretty interesting, that are forming in all of our major reservoirs around the state. And there would be tree mortality at those as well, because periods of drought, like what's going on right now. I mean, the trees in the Des Moines River Valley are crazy, and when the reservoir comes up, they're all going to get killed. So, yes, it does definitely happen. There again, wetland ecosystems are so cool because the life history that lives there are so adapted to these dynamic environments, and the way that, for example, American cottonwoods have figured out how to make a go of living in a really dynamic environment where you may get flooded out is to basically complete their entire life history in a really small number of years. That's why they grow so big so fast, and they have really short lifespans too. That's why we find that a lot. These wetland ecosystems are really kind of rugged places so a lot of the organisms live there are adapted to sort of deal with that. In this case, what we say is live fast and die fast. What's the expression? Live hard, die fast. I think that's the expression for that type of life history.
So I want to go look at the ones of the delta, or the area on the upstream end of Saylorville, because I was going across the mile-long bridge on Saturday and noticed that with the water that we've gotten the last couple of weeks, we had washed a lot of woody debris out of that area, I think upstream, because there were just massive areas of woody debris up against the ice that was left in Saylorville. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So, and this one, somebody also commented that 10-to-1 slopes and borrowing for the dike away. Yeah, those 10-to-1 slopes really helped with discouraging muskrats and also frequent dewatering. They've used that in southeast Kansas to help reduce muskrat damage.
Great, thanks.
So I think that Adam and Kay, I think we've gotten through most all of the questions. As is usually the case, people are very interested in wetlands. This is awesome. And I think the drone videos, the drones give us a new way to look at these wetlands that we don't get when we're just on the ground. So I think, hopefully helps us even increase our appreciation for these wetland ecosystems that we have in Iowa. And so with that, again, if you need a CCA CEU, Elena, ALENAW at iastate.edu by 5 o'clock today. We'll see if Elena can get the email today. So if you send it, we'll get it sometime. We'll see when they come in. And also, please tune in next week. Dan Kaiser from the University of Minnesota will be talking about sulfur. So a little different topic, but please consider tuning in. And I would just encourage everybody to go view the videos that Adam and Kay have put together. So with that, Adam or Kay, any last comments?
Nope, that's all. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, please check out the resources. And if we're missing stuff on the website, we're always all ears. Please shoot us an email and let us know if we can put more on there. Always happy to provide it.
One thing I did want to mention is that this recording, I think that I got the recording made, will be available on the Iowa Learning Farms website. So somebody wanted to know if they could get a copy of the recording, and it will be up there. So thank you very much, everyone.